Welcome back, seekers of the truth. Tonight, we are embarking on a journey not across the stars, but into the deep, frozen heart of our own world. We are going to the ultimate terrestrial frontier, a place so vast, so silent, and so utterly alien that it makes the surface of Mars look like a tourist resort. We are talking about Antarctica, but forget the penguins, forget the blinding white snow. We are plunging miles beneath that surface into a realm of eternal night, crushing pressure, and secrets locked away for millions upon millions of years. This is where the rules of geology, biology, and perhaps even history cease to apply. This is the realm of frozen secrets, the unexplained anomalies hidden beneath Antarctica's ice sheet. If you, like me, are captivated by the impossible riddles of our planet, the things that science can detect but cannot yet explain, then please do me a huge favor right now. Pause for just 2 seconds. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a good mystery. And of course, subscribe to the channel. And make absolutely certain you activate the bell button for notifications for our new videos, because trust me, you do not want to miss what we uncover next week. Now, before we descend into the darkness, I have a question for you to ponder and answer down in the comments below. If scientists cracked open a subglacial lake tomorrow and found microbial life that evolved completely separately from surface life, what is the single most important ethical or philosophical question we would have to answer first? Let me know your thoughts down there. Now, let's talk about scale. When you picture Antarctica, you visualize an ice cube, but that's wrong. You need to visualize an ice continent. This place holds roughly 90% of the world's freshwater ice. It is a mass so immense that it is actively warping the Earth's crust beneath it. We are talking about 14 million square kilometers of unforgiving, frozen silence. And the average depth of this ice sheet? It's not meters. It's measured in kilometers. In some places, the ice sheet is nearly 5 kilometers thick, a colossal, silent blanket of frozen time. Imagine the weight. Imagine the pressure. Now imagine what happens when that pressure, combined with geothermal heat rising from the Earth's mantle, creates conditions where water, liquid, flowing water, can exist, trapped, miles beneath the ice. This is where the story truly begins, the subglacial landscape. For decades, scientists believed Antarctica was a massive, solid block of ice resting on solid bedrock. We were wrong. Thanks to advanced radar mapping and satellite gravimetry, we now know that beneath the ice, there exists an intricate, dynamic, and massive hydrological system. We are talking about hundreds of interconnected lakes and rivers, a hidden world of liquid water that has been isolated from the surface atmosphere for potentially 15 million years. The most famous, the most profound, and perhaps the most terrifying of these is Lake Vostok. Vostok is an anomaly of geological extremes. It is one of the largest subglacial lakes in the world, stretching roughly 250 kilometers long and 50 kilometers wide. That's about the size of Lake Ontario. It sits directly beneath the Russian Vostok Station, 4 kilometers of solid, crushing ice above it. Think about the environment inside Vostok. The pressure is immense, roughly 350 times standard atmospheric pressure. The temperature hovers just below freezing, but the water remains liquid because of the pressure and the geothermal heat source beneath the lakebed. It is completely devoid of light and completely isolated from the modern biological world. This isolation is the key. For over 15 million years, everything inside Lake Vostok has been evolving on its own, utilizing chemical energy, perhaps hydrogen, methane, or sulfur compounds, to sustain life in the absence of sunlight. If there is life down there, and most scientists agree that the conditions are favorable for microbial chemosynthetic life, it would represent a completely unique, separate branch on the tree of life. It would be an alien ecosystem right here on Earth, preserved in deep time. The process of reaching Vostok has been agonizingly slow and controversial. Drilling into this pristine, ancient environment is fraught with ethical peril. The fear is simple: contamination. If we introduce modern microbes from the surface, we risk destroying or altering the very life forms we seek to study. The scientific community has gone to extraordinary lengths to develop clean drilling techniques, using hot water and specialized robotic probes designed to melt through the final few meters of ice, ensuring that the water sampled is truly untouched. When the first samples of Vostok water and accreted ice were brought up, the findings were immediately electrifying, yet puzzling. They found evidence of complex, multi-layered microbes, bacteria and archaea, that thrive in extreme conditions. Some of these organisms bear no resemblance to anything cataloged on the surface. They are life forms perfectly adapted to the crushing darkness and the high concentration of gases, including oxygen, which is trapped under the ice at levels 50 times higher than in normal surface water. This hyper-oxygenated environment alone poses a profound challenge to conventional biology. How do these life forms survive such toxicity? But Vostok is just the start. Antarctica hides hundreds of these lakes. Lake Mercer, for instance, which was breached more recently, offered a different kind of biological shock. Unlike the deep, ancient isolation of Vostok, Mercer showed evidence of organic material that seemed to have been introduced more recently, perhaps from periods when the ice sheet was slightly thinner. Scientists found the remnants of tardigrades, microscopic water bears, and even crustacean fragments. This suggests a potentially cyclical history for some of these subglacial environments, where life may have been introduced, isolated, and then reintroduced over geological timescales. The implications are staggering. The ice sheet is not a static tomb. It is a dynamic, shifting filter, preserving and sometimes releasing biological secrets. Beyond the biological realm, the ice sheet conceals geological structures that defy our current understanding of continental formation. Beneath the ice, the landmass of Antarctica is incredibly complex. It's not just a flat basin. It's a massive continent carved by ancient mountains, deep rift valleys, and enormous canyons. One of the most persistent and unnerving anomalies detected beneath the ice is the system of unexplained gravity variations. Using satellite measurements, specifically the GRACE satellites, which measure minute changes in gravity caused by mass distribution, scientists have identified regions where the density of the underlying rock seems fundamentally different from what standard geological models predict. In certain sections of East Antarctica, there are massive, buried mountain ranges that rival the Alps in height, yet they are completely invisible, entombed under miles of ice. These are the Gamburtsev Mountains, a riddle that has baffled geophysicists for decades. How did such a massive mountain range form in the middle of a continental plate? And why did it not erode away over the hundreds of millions of years it existed before the ice sheet formed? The current theory suggests a complex interaction involving mantle plumes and ancient tectonic sutures, but the sheer scale and preservation of the Gamburtsevs remain an unsolved mystery, suggesting a geological process unique to this part of the world. But the real mystery lies in the magnetic and heat signatures emanating from the deep bedrock, particularly in West Antarctica. West Antarctica is essentially an archipelago of islands held together by the colossal weight of the ice. It sits upon an active rift system, similar to the East African Rift. Here, scientists have detected significant geothermal heat flow, heat rising from deep within the Earth. This heat is what keeps the massive rivers and lakes beneath the ice liquid. But the sources of that heat are profoundly irregular. In 2017, researchers published data suggesting that the geothermal heat flux in some areas is far higher than previously estimated. This isn't just passive cooling, this is active heating. Some theories propose the existence of deep-seated mantle plumes, columns of hot rock rising from the core mantle boundary that are slowly melting the ice from below. Imagine that scenario, a massive 5-kilometer thick layer of ice, insulating and preserving everything above it, while beneath it, the Earth is actively boiling. This localized melting creates enormous cavities and channels beneath the ice, accelerating the flow of glaciers toward the sea. This has profound implications for global sea level rise, but it also raises the question, what is the geological structure that is causing such intense, localized heating? Is there a supervolcano buried beneath the ice sheet, a feature that has been dormant for millennia but is still radiating immense heat? The data is inconclusive, but the signatures are clear. Something exceptionally energetic is happening deep beneath the ice, something that requires a massive, sustained heat source that we cannot yet fully map or understand. And then we come to the truly unexplained, the anomalies that drift into the realm of speculation and fringe science, but which are nevertheless rooted in legitimate, perplexing geophysical data. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, specialized radar surveys began to map the bedrock in unprecedented detail. What they found, in several isolated locations, were massive, distinct, geometric structures embedded in the rock beneath the thickest parts of the ice. These structures appear too regular, too defined, and too large to be explained by natural geological processes like fault lines or ancient riverbeds. One such anomaly, often referred to in hushed tones by researchers, is located deep in Wilkes Land, East Antarctica. Satellite imagery and subsurface radar readings suggest a massive, circular structure, roughly 480 kilometers in diameter, buried beneath the ice. While the official scientific explanation leans towards a massive impact crater, perhaps the largest and oldest on Earth, predating the formation of the ice sheet, the sheer regularity of the shape and the associated intense magnetic signature have led to alternative, more compelling theories. If it is an impact crater, it would have been caused by an event so catastrophic that it would have scarred the entire planet, potentially linked to the Permian-Triassic extinction event, the Great Dying, which wiped out 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species. The idea that the trigger for the greatest extinction in Earth's history is silently preserved under the Antarctic ice sheet is a humbling thought. But if it is not a crater, what then? The geometric regularity fuels speculation about ancient, buried civilizations. While this sounds like science fiction, the principle is simple. If the ice sheet is 15 million years old, anything predating that period, anything built on the continent when it was warmer and habitable, would now be perfectly preserved under the ice, pressed into the bedrock. Consider the historical context. Antarctica was not always a frozen wasteland. Millions of years ago, it was covered in lush forests, teeming with life. As the continental plates shifted and Antarctica moved south, the ice began to accumulate. If any advanced species existed on Earth during the Eocene or Oligocene periods, their structures would be waiting for us, entombed in ice. The silence of Antarctica becomes a profound, deafening archive of deep history. The greatest challenge in investigating these anomalies is the silence itself. The ice sheet is the ultimate insulator. It absorbs noise, it blocks traditional light, and it hides everything beneath a crushing, impenetrable veil. We rely entirely on remote sensing, on gravity, magnetic fields, and radar to interpret a landscape we cannot see, feel, or touch directly. It is like trying to read a massive library by feeling the vibrations of the bookshelf. This brings us back to the psychological impact of the continent. Antarctica is often described by those who work there as a place of profound existential silence. It is the only continent on Earth that has never had an indigenous human population. It remains fundamentally untouched by human industry, save for the small, temporary research stations. This silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the absence of human history, human conflict, and human noise. It is a silence that preserves secrets perfectly, allowing no erosion, no decay, and no disturbance. It is a perfect time capsule. When we consider the possibility of life in Lake Vostok, or the potential for finding geological structures that rewrite our understanding of Earth's history, we are not just looking for facts. We are looking for confirmation that the history of our planet is far stranger, far more complex, and far more cyclical than we currently allow for. The ice sheet is not just a barrier, it is a promise. It promises that the answers to our deepest questions about life, geology, and history are waiting, patient and silent, beneath the frozen surface. The anomalies, the strange magnetic readings, the hyperoxygenated water, the inexplicable heat flows, the geometric structures, are all just whispers, faint echoes rising through 4 kilometers of ice, reminding us that we have barely scratched the surface of what lies hidden in the white darkness. We will continue to explore the specifics of these subglacial systems, diving deeper into the history of the ice core samples, and examining the geopolitical struggle for scientific dominance over this last frontier. But for now, take a moment to absorb the sheer magnitude of this frozen secret. 4 kilometers down, miles across, a liquid world waiting in the dark. Thank you for joining me on this descent into the unfathomable. Stay curious, stay questioning, and I will see you in the next video. Welcome back, seekers of the unexplained. If you thought we finished our journey into the ice last time, you were dead wrong. That was just the appetizer. We talked about the sheer scale, the 4 kilometers of frozen history above a liquid world. Today, we're strapping on the virtual oxygen tanks and plunging into the specifics. We're going to name names, drill down into the controversial samples, and figure out exactly why the world's superpowers are locked in a silent, frozen war for the secrets of Antarctica. Last time, I promised we'd start with the specifics of the subglacial systems, and there is no better or more terrifying place to start than with Lake Vostok. The heart of the ice, Lake Vostok, and the thermal paradox. Vostok isn't just a big puddle. It's a colossal anomaly, discovered beneath the Russian Vostok station. Imagine Lake Ontario, that massive body of fresh water. Now picture it completely sealed off from the surface world for maybe 15 million years. That's Vostok. It's 250 kilometers long, 50 kilometers wide, and in some places, half a kilometer deep. But here's the mind bender. Why is it liquid? It's under 4,000 meters of ice, where temperatures should be plunging towards absolute zero. The answer lies in a combination of physics, pressure, and the sheer heat of the Earth itself. First, the pressure. 4 kilometers of ice weigh down on that water, forcing the freezing point down to well below 0 degrees Celsius. This is known as pressure melting. But that alone isn't enough to keep a body of water that size from eventually freezing solid. The real secret sauce is geothermal heat flux. Deep beneath Vostok, the Earth's mantle is radiating heat upwards. It's a localized thermal anomaly, possibly due to thinner crust or higher concentrations of radioactive elements in the bedrock, like uranium and thorium, which naturally decay and produce heat. This slow, steady warmth, combined with the insulating blanket of the ice above and the pressure below, creates a perfect, stable liquid ecosystem miles beneath the surface. It's a sealed terrarium, a biological capsule, operating on principles utterly foreign to the rest of our planet's surface ecology. And speaking of foreign ecology, this is where things get truly exciting. If you haven't already, take a second to smash that like button and subscribe, because the deeper we go, the weirder the life gets. If Vostok has been sealed for millions of years, what lives down there? We're talking about an environment with no sunlight, incredible pressure, high concentrations of dissolved gases, especially nitrogen and oxygen, trapped from the ancient ice, and a potential mineral cocktail unlike anything we've studied. Forget photosynthesis. Life here, if it exists, must be chemosynthetic. It survives by metabolizing inorganic compounds, possibly hydrogen sulfide, iron, or methane, derived from the geothermal vents or the bedrock itself. When scientists finally managed to sample the accretion ice, the layer of lake water that freezes onto the bottom of the glacier, they found DNA fragments. And these fragments weren't just common surface bugs that somehow got trapped. They found evidence of bacteria, archaea, and even complex multicellular organisms that defy classification. One of the most compelling discoveries was the identification of a bacterial strain closely related to Mari profundus ferrooxidans, a type of iron-oxidizing bacteria typically found in deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Think about that. Life that thrives in volcanic vents, now found miles beneath Antarctic ice. It suggests a vast, interconnected deep biosphere that we are only just beginning to scratch the surface of. Now, imagine the implications. If life can survive and even thrive in this utterly hostile environment, what does that tell us about the potential for life on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus? Vostok isn't just a secret of Earth, it's a blueprint for astrobiology. I want to know what you think. If we find a completely unique, complex organism in Vostok, should we immediately classify it as terrestrial? Or does its isolation warrant an entirely new category? Drop your theories in the comments below. The geopolitical ice core war, Vostok Station, and the race to drill. The discovery of Vostok didn't just excite biologists, it terrified climatologists and triggered the most intense scientific arms race since the Cold War space race. The key to understanding Antarctica and the entire history of Earth's climate lies in the ice cores. Ice cores are essentially frozen cylinders of compressed snow and trapped atmosphere. As snow falls year after year, it compresses into ice, trapping tiny bubbles of air. Drill down 3,700 meters, and you are holding a record of Earth's atmosphere, temperature, and volcanic activity, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. The Russians, operating Vostok Station, were the pioneers. They started drilling deep in the 1970s. By the early 1990s, they had achieved a record depth, pulling out cores that documented 420,000 years of climate history, a discovery that fundamentally altered our understanding of ice ages and greenhouse gas cycles. But then they hit the danger zone. Around 3,769 meters, they reached the interface between the ancient glacial ice and the lake water itself. The international scientific community panicked. If the Russians punched through, the drilling fluid, kerosene, freon, and industrial lubricants used to keep the borehole open would contaminate the pristine, sealed lake ecosystem. It would destroy 15 million years of biological history in an instant. The drilling stopped for almost a decade while the world debated the ethics of discovery versus preservation. This wasn't just a scientific disagreement. It was a matter of international law under the Antarctic Treaty System. Finally, in 2012, using a specially designed thermal probe and a clean drilling technique, the Russian team successfully breached the lake. They brought up the first samples of the freshly frozen accretion ice. The initial findings confirmed the biological diversity, but the operation itself was a political tightrope walk. This incident galvanized the other players. The United States and the United Kingdom realized they couldn't just sit back while Russia dominated the most critical piece of real estate on the planet. The Western response: Lake Whillans and Lake Mercer. Learning from the Vostok controversy, the U.S. launched its own ambitious program to explore other subglacial lakes, focusing on systems that were deemed active, meaning they exchanged water with the ocean or other systems, making the contamination risk less catastrophic. Enter Lake Whillans, now officially called Subglacial Lake Whillans, or SLW. In 2013, the U.S. team successfully used a clean hot water drilling technique, essentially a giant sterilized pressure washer, to access the lake without using toxic drilling fluids. The findings from Whillans were immediate and spectacular. They found a teeming microbial ecosystem. Unlike Vostok, which is thought to be extremely oligotrophic, nutrient-poor, Whillans was rich with life. Over 4,000 species of microbes, surviving by metabolizing methane and sulfur compounds derived from the ancient marine sediments the lake rests upon. They even found evidence of organisms that consume the minerals in the surrounding rock. Then came Lake Mercer. Also accessed by the U.S. in 2018, Mercer offered a different kind of prize. While Whillans was shallow and active, Mercer was deeper and appeared to have been disconnected for longer. The sediments pooled from Mercer contained something truly astonishing: the remains of land animals and plants. We're talking tardigrades, copepods, and even fragments of ancient moss-like plants. This meant that at some point in the distant past, perhaps during the Pliocene warm period 3 to 5 million years ago, this region of West Antarctica was not covered by thick ice. It was a functioning ecosystem, a tundra or boreal forest, before the massive glaciation sealed it away. The ice wasn't just preserving climate data, it was preserving the remnants of a vanished Antarctic landscape. If you're finding these secrets as mind-blowing as I am, do me a favor and hit that notification bell right now. You don't want to miss when we connect these ancient life forms to the truly unexplained structural anomalies. The 800,000-year ice core, a frozen clock. Let's circle back to the ice cores for a moment, because they are the foundation of this entire mystery. After the Vostok cores, the European project for ice coring in Antarctica, EPICA, took the lead. Drilling at Dome C, a high point on the East Antarctic Plateau. The EPICA cores redefined history. They extended the climate record back 800,000 years. 800 millennia of precise atmospheric composition, showing the cyclical relationship between temperature, carbon dioxide, and methane. This provided irrefutable evidence of natural climate variability, but more importantly, it established a baseline for understanding the unprecedented changes we see today. But here is a lesser-known fact about these deep cores. The deeper you go, the more compressed the ice becomes, and the harder it is to distinguish annual layers. At the very bottom, close to the bedrock, the ice is often shear-to-formed, meaning it's been twisted and stretched by the movement of the glacier, mixing up the chronological record. However, sometimes, deep beneath the distorted ice, scientists find something called meteoritic dust. This isn't just dust from Earth, it's cosmic material, micrometeorites that rained down on the planet millions of years ago. By studying the concentrations and chemical signatures of this dust, we can date the deepest ice layers, confirming that some of this material has been locked away since the Miocene epoch. Think of the ice core as a giant frozen library. The top shelves hold recent history, easy to read. The bottom shelves hold priceless ancient manuscripts, but they are fragile, twisted, and sometimes contain pages from entirely different books. The accretion ice from the subglacial lakes. This is why the geopolitical competition is so fierce. Whoever controls the deepest, cleanest core has the definitive history of the planet. The strategic importance: water, minerals, and sovereignty. Why spend billions drilling under ice? The answer is simple: resources and future leverage. Antarctica holds 70% of the world's fresh water. While the Antarctic Treaty prohibits resource extraction, the treaty is due for review, and the pressure is mounting. The subglacial lakes represent the cleanest, most untouched water source on Earth. In a future defined by water scarcity, controlling the knowledge of these systems is strategic power. Furthermore, gravity mapping and seismic surveys suggest that the bedrock beneath the ice is rich in minerals. The Transantarctic Mountains, which are essentially extensions of the Andes, are known to contain coal, iron ore, and potentially rich veins of precious metals. The lakes give scientists a way to study the deep geology without removing the ice sheet, a crucial step in mapping future resource potential. The geopolitical struggle is often framed as Russia versus the West, US, UK, and increasingly China. China, though a relative newcomer, is rapidly establishing new stations and launching ambitious deep-field expeditions, signaling its intent to be a dominant player in the Antarctic future. This isn't just about flags and claims. It's about setting the scientific and ethical precedents for what happens when the ice inevitably retreats or the treaty evolves. It's a silent, high-stakes game of frozen chess. Now, let's move past the known science and into the realm of the truly unexplained. This is the part that keeps the conspiracy theorists. For years, scientists have used satellite gravity mapping systems, like the GRACE satellites, to measure tiny variations in Earth's gravitational pull caused by mass differences. This is how we map out the size and depth of the subglacial lakes in the first place. But beneath Lake Vostok, the gravity data, combined with specialized aeromagnetic surveys, reveals something that doesn't fit the geological model: the Vostok magnetic anomaly. The VMA is a massive, intense magnetic signature concentrated near the southern end of the lake. It suggests the presence of a huge, dense, iron-rich body buried deep beneath the lake and the bedrock. Standard geology suggests this should be a massive deposit of banded iron formation or highly magnetized volcanic rock. However, the sheer size and intensity of the VMA are disproportionate to the expected geological structures in that region. To put it in perspective, the VMA is one of the strongest localized magnetic anomalies ever detected on Earth. It's so powerful that early measurements dismissed it as sensor error.
What could cause this? Theory 1. A massive meteorite impact. A gigantic iron-nickel asteroid could have slammed into the crust millions of years ago, before the ice formed, leaving a dense, magnetized remnant buried deep in the mantle.
This is plausible, but the shape and consistency of the anomaly are not entirely consistent with a typical impact crater. Theory 2. A massive mantle plume. An upwelling of extremely dense, iron-rich material from the deep mantle, cooled and solidified beneath the crust. This would be a unique geological feature, but still within the bounds of natural phenomena. Theory 3. The non-natural hypothesis. This is where the narrative shifts from science to speculation, but it's speculation driven by empirical data that simply cannot be explained by known processes. If the VMA is not a natural geological formation, what is it? Some researchers, operating in hushed tones, suggest it could be a massive, organized metallic structure. Think of something artificial, something engineered, perhaps a colossal power source, a remnant of a hyper-advanced civilization, or even an alien craft buried and preserved by millions of years of ice accumulation. Remember the ancient life found in Lake Mercer? If Antarctica was green and habitable millions of years ago, what kind of civilization could have flourished and then vanished, leaving behind only an incomprehensible magnetic signature? This VMA is the ghost in the frozen machine, the single biggest question mark hanging over the entire continent.
Scientists are actively trying to map it with higher precision, but the depth and the extreme cold make direct exploration virtually impossible right now. Subglacial hydrology, the river systems under the ice. Vostok is the crown jewel, but it is far from the only subglacial lake. We now know there are over 400 interconnected subglacial lakes and vast river systems flowing beneath the Antarctic ice sheet.
This network is known as the subglacial hydrology system. These aren't static bodies of water. They are dynamic, moving environments. Water flows from one lake to the next, sometimes draining entire lakes rapidly, causing the ice sheet above to rise and fall dramatically, a phenomenon measurable by satellite altimetry. These sudden drainage events are critical because they lubricate the underside of the ice sheet, essentially acting as a slip and slide for the massive glaciers. The speed at which the ice flows out to the ocean, contributing to global sea level rise, is directly linked to the activity of these subglacial rivers. The discovery of this dynamic system completely changed glaciology.
We realized the ice sheet isn't a passive block. It's a massive, living entity, influenced by the water flowing beneath it. Think about the sheer volume. The total volume of water locked up in these systems is comparable to the volume of Lake Michigan.
It's a continental-scale circulatory system operating in total darkness. And the flow rates. Some of these rivers are estimated to be as powerful as the Thames, carving out massive canyons in the bedrock. In fact, seismic data has revealed deep, winding canyons beneath the ice, features known as subglacial troughs, which were likely carved by ancient rivers before the ice formed and are now being reactivated by the flowing subglacial water. If you are just tuning in, you need to share this video with someone who loves a good mystery, because we are getting into the deepest, darkest corners of the planet, and we are nowhere near done. The role of microbes in ice sheet stability. Let's bring the biology and the glaciology together. It turns out that the tiny extremophile life forms we discussed earlier might have a massive impact on the stability of the entire ice sheet. When microbes metabolize organic matter in the deep sediments, they produce heat. This biological heat production though small at the individual level, can be significant when scaled across a continental-sized biosphere. This microbial activity contributes to the lubrication process, helping to keep the basal layer of the ice sheet slightly melted. Furthermore, the microbes produce chemical byproducts, like methane, which can alter the physical properties of the water and the ice interface. Scientists are now investigating whether periods of increased microbial activity, perhaps triggered by changes in pressure or geothermal heat, could lead to surges in ice flow, accelerating the release of ice into the ocean. This means that the fate of the global coastline might, in part, be governed by the metabolic rates of unseen, uncultured bacteria living miles beneath the ice. It's a perfect example of how the smallest secrets can hold the largest consequences. The ethical dilemma of the next generation of exploration. The first generation of subglacial exploration was about reaching the water. The next generation is about what we do with it. The primary ethical dilemma remains planetary protection. If we bring up ancient, unknown pathogens from Vostok, organisms that have evolved in complete isolation for millions of years, do we risk introducing a superbug to which the surface world has no immunity? This is the plot of countless sci-fi thrillers, but in Antarctica, it's a very real scientific concern. The solution being developed involves strict biocontainment protocols, utilizing robotic submersibles that can sample the lake and analyze the material in situ, in place, without bringing large volumes of water to the surface. One incredible piece of technology being developed is the cryobot. This is a self-contained, nuclear-powered probe designed to melt its way vertically through the ice, carrying a smaller, clean submersible called a hydrobot. The cryobot heats the ice, melts a path, and then seals the hole behind it with the meltwater, theoretically minimizing the risk of contamination. The goal is to send a hydrobot into a lake like Vostok, allow it to navigate autonomously, take high-resolution video, perform DNA sequencing on the spot, and possibly even drill into the sediments to look for evidence of past climate, or, dare I say it, technological remnants. The development of these probes is another front in the geopolitical race. The nation that successfully deploys the first fully autonomous, contamination-free deep ice explorer will hold the key to the most profound scientific discoveries of the century. Connecting the dots, the ancient ice and the lost civilization hypothesis. Let's return to the most intriguing mystery, the Vostok magnetic anomaly and the findings from Lake Mercer. If you combine the evidence of a temperate past in Antarctica, Mercer's ancient mosses and fauna, with the unexplained metallic signature, VMA, you start building a compelling, albeit speculative, case for the Antarctic Atlantis, or the lost Hyperborean civilization. Mainstream science dismisses this as pure fantasy, but the data points are real. The VMA exists. The Pliocene warmth allowed complex life to flourish. And we know that civilizations, even on our current timeline, often build near major water sources. The hypothesis suggests that millions of years ago, when the continent was ice-free, a technologically advanced society utilized the geothermal energy sources found beneath the crust. Perhaps the VMA is not a natural deposit, but the core of a massive subterranean power generation facility, or a protective dome preserved by the rapid onset of glaciation. As the ice advanced, it sealed this structure off, protecting it from erosion and weathering. The sheer depth of the ice then compressed and preserved the environment, creating a geological time capsule. This theory gains a chilling layer of plausibility when considering some of the persistent, yet officially unverified, rumors circulating among deep-field researchers. Reports of strange, non-linear radar returns beneath the ice, geometries that suggest right angles and intentional construction rather than natural geological folds. These radar anomalies, if confirmed, would be the smoking gun. They would transform the Vostok magnetic anomaly from a geological quirk into the site of the biggest archaeological find in human history. This is why the scrutiny on every single ice core sample, every sediment layer, and every sonar reading is so intense. They aren't just looking for climate history. They are looking for the definitive proof that we are not the first advanced civilization to walk this planet. The future of the frozen frontier. So, where do we go from here? The next phase of Antarctic research is moving towards deep field mapping, utilizing advanced airborne radar and gravity sensors to map every single subglacial lake and river system. The goal is a complete, three-dimensional model of the bedrock and the hydrology beneath the ice. This mapping will undoubtedly reveal more anomalies, more Vostoks, and more potential sites of unexplained magnetic and gravitational disturbances. The Antarctic Treaty System is under increasing strain. As the scientific and resource potential grows, the political pressure to claim territory or exploit resources will intensify. The current cooperative model is fragile, and the secrets hidden beneath the ice sheet could be the catalyst that shatters it. We are standing at the edge of the deepest secrets Earth holds. 4 kilometers of ice, holding the history of the world, protecting a liquid world that might harbor life unlike anything we know, and possibly relics of a forgotten past. Thank you for diving deep with me on this exploration of Antarctica's hidden layers. It is a story that is constantly evolving, and I promise you, we will continue to follow every seismic reading, every ice core analysis, and every geopolitical maneuver in this frozen struggle for dominance. Before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell me, what do you think is the most likely explanation for the Vostok lignetic anomaly? Is it natural, or are we looking at evidence of a lost civilization? Let me know in the comments. Stay curious, stay questioning, And I'll see you in the next video, where we tackle the mysterious moving structures detected by radar under the Ross Ice Shelf. Don't miss it.
All right, welcome back to the channel, Anomaly Hunters. You guys absolutely blew up the comments section on the Vostok anomaly, and I love the debate you're having. Seriously, keep those theories coming. Whether you think it's a massive iron meteorite or a buried Atlantean power source, I'm reading them all. But we promised to move on, didn't we?
We're leaving the massive, deep, enigmatic Lake Vostok for a moment and sailing, or rather scanning, westward, right over to the largest single mass of floating ice on the planet, the colossal Ross Ice Shelf. This place isn't just big, it's terrifyingly dynamic, and it holds secrets that make the Vostok magnetic readings like a child's refrigerator magnet. We are diving deep into the infamous Ross Ice Shelf moving structures, often whispered about in hushed tones among geophysicists, and casually referred to by the conspiracy community as the Ross Shifters. Now, what are we talking about here? We're talking about solid, massive, defined objects detected deep beneath the ice sheet, often sitting right at the ice-ocean interface, sometimes even embedded in the basal ice layer. These detections weren't made by some fringe group with a homemade antenna. These are results derived primarily from NASA's Operation Icebridge and subsequent NSF missions utilizing advanced high-penetration radar systems. These radar systems, designed to measure ice thickness, found something unexpected in the late 2000s and early 2010s. They found objects, structures, formations, whatever you want to call them, that registered as incredibly dense, non-ice masses. And here's the kicker. The part that separates this anomaly from standard subglacial topography. When the flight paths were repeated months or even a year later, these objects had moved. Let's be clear about the scale. We aren't talking about shifting boulders or small thermal vents. Some of the detected masses were estimated to be kilometers in length and width, showing a coherent, geometric shape, inconsistent with natural subglacial drainage channels or sediment deposits. Imagine something the size of Manhattan, buried under a mile of ice, slowly, deliberately changing position. The movement itself is calculated in meters per day in some instances, a speed far too rapid for standard tectonic drift, and completely defying the physics of basal melting and refreezing that usually governs the slow creep of glacial ice. If it were standard ice flow, the objects would be stretched, sheared, or incorporated into the glacier structure itself. These structures, however, maintain their integrity and distinct radar signature as they shift. So, what are the mainstream explanations trying to cope with this? They try to dismiss it as complex hydrological dynamics, massive subglacial lakes emptying and refilling, causing localized buoyancy changes that push large sediment beds around. But the data doesn't fully support this. The density readings are too high for loose sediment, and the movement patterns lack the chaotic nature you'd expect from fluid dynamics. They appear almost guided. And this is where the classified reports get interesting. There are persistent rumors that certain government agencies aren't just looking at if these things are moving, but how they are moving. Is the movement passive, or is it active? Are we looking at natural phenomena that we simply don't understand yet, or are we witnessing the maneuvering of something intelligent? Think about that for a second. Underneath the vast, crushing weight of the Ross Ice Shelf, an entire region of solid, dense material is repositioning itself. If these are natural geological formations, they represent a geological process unlike anything we have documented on Earth. If they are artificial, well, that changes everything we know about history, technology, and the current occupation of this planet. Before we dive into the next layer of hell, which involves the Doomsday Glacier and the mysterious heat source melting it from below, do me a huge favor. If this deep dive into the frozen unknown is hitting the right buttons for you, smash that like button right now. It helps the channel immensely and tells the algorithm that these secrets need to be exposed. Okay, let's talk heat. Because the Ross shifters aren't the only major anomaly in West Antarctica, we need to focus our attention slightly east to the infamous Thwaites Glacier. You've heard of it, right? It's nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier because its collapse could single-handedly raise global sea levels by several feet, catastrophic for coastal cities everywhere. But why is Thwaites melting so fast? The conventional answer is climate change, warm ocean currents eating away at the edges. That's true, but it's not the whole story. Recent, highly specialized subglacial mapping missions have revealed alarming evidence of geothermal heat flux far exceeding normal expectations right beneath the Thwaites grounding line. In plain English, Thwaites is being heated from below by an intense, localized heat source. Now, Earth is geologically active, especially in West Antarctica, which is a massive rift system. Standard scientific theory suggests this high heat flux is simply due to magma conduits, or thin crust, allowing heat from the Earth's mantle to escape. A natural, though concerning, explanation. But here's the anomaly within the anomaly. The heat signature isn't evenly distributed across the rift system. It's highly concentrated and appears to be moving or pulsing in specific locations beneath the ice. We are talking about areas where the heat flow is measured at 2 to 3 times the expected rate for a stable continental plate. If this heat is purely geothermal, it means there are massive, previously unknown volcanic or magmatic activities happening right now, directly under the most vulnerable ice shelf on the planet. But let's entertain the alternative, the one that the military and deep penetration radar specialists quietly debate. Is this heat source natural, or is it artificially generated? Imagine a lost civilization, or perhaps an occupying force that requires massive amounts of energy to sustain itself or its technology beneath the ice. The byproduct of immense energy generation is inevitably heat. If a massive subterranean facility were utilizing some form of advanced geothermal tapping or even nuclear fusion, a clean, massive energy source, the thermal signature would be exactly what we are detecting under Thwaites, a concentrated, localized, intense plume of heat. Furthermore, the data collected by the British Antarctic Survey, BAS, and U.S. researchers shows unusual water chemistry in the subglacial discharge zones around Thwaites. It's not just warm. It contains trace elements and isotopes that are difficult to account for through standard rock-water interaction. Some researchers have privately suggested these elements might be telltale signs of industrial waste or highly specialized material breakdown. I want you guys to think critically about this and tell me in the comments, if you had to choose between a hidden, massive, shifting magma chamber, geological anomaly, and a vast, buried energy facility, technological anomaly, as the source of the Thwaites heat flux, which one feels more plausible given the concurrent magnetic and movement anomalies we've already discussed? Drop your theories below. Now, let's pivot slightly and look at something even stranger than moving structures or localized heat bombs, the life that exists down there. We've talked about the physical anomalies, but what about the biological ones? The creatures that shouldn't exist, thriving in conditions that should be instantly lethal. When scientists finally managed to drill into Lake Vostok, and more recently, Lake Mercer, they weren't just looking for water, they were looking for life. And boy, did they find it. In 2018, samples extracted from Lake Mercer revealed an ecosystem that blew the minds of microbiologists. They found thousands of different microbial species, many of which had DNA sequences that didn't match anything cataloged on Earth's surface. These weren't just strange bacteria. They were extremophiles that had evolved in complete isolation for millions of years, adapting to crushing pressure, total darkness, and near freezing water. But the real shocker came from the deep water samples. Researchers found evidence of multicellular life, complex organisms, often referred to cryptically in papers as large unidentified metazoans. We are talking about something potentially larger than microbes, existing in a dark, cold, high-pressure environment with minimal energy input. Some reports hinted at the presence of creatures resembling specialized crustaceans, or even small, pale, blind worms, organisms that have evolved entirely separately from the rest of the planet's biosphere. Imagine a world cut off 15 million years ago. What would evolve? What would survive? If these creatures are merely part of a deep-sea vent system that happens to be covered by ice. That's fascinating. But if they are part of a self-sustaining ecosystem built around a massive artificial heat or energy source, like the one rumored beneath Thwaites, then we are looking at a biological confirmation of a hidden world. And this leads us to the most outlandish but persistent reports, the sightings of strange, bioluminescent fauna in the deep ice boreholes. These aren't just microbes glowing. These are reports from drilling teams, often dismissed as ice madness or hallucinations caused by isolation, describing sudden flashes of light, large shadows, and even rhythmic pulsing sounds coming from the depths of the boreholes. Think about the implications. An ecosystem so robust it generates its own light, independent of surface energy, possibly utilizing chemosynthesis or some unknown energy conversion process. Could these biological anomalies be the descendants of creatures that once lived on the surface before Antarctica froze over? Or are they adapted forms of life that have been engineered or maintained by whatever intelligence is hiding beneath the ice? We have covered magnetic fields, shifting structures, and mysterious heat. But now we need to look up. Because Antarctica isn't just a place of subterranean secrets, it's a hotbed for atmospheric anomalies and unexplained aerial phenomena, UAPs. For decades, pilots and researchers stationed at remote Antarctic bases have reported unusual activity in the skies, particularly around the geographic South Pole and the regions adjacent to the Trans-Antarctic Mountains. These aren't just blurry photos. These are often high-speed, silent craft, exhibiting flight characteristics that defy known aerodynamics. Why Antarctica? Perhaps the same dense, metallic, or energy-rich material that causes the Vostok magnetic anomaly also interferes with or attracts these aerial visitors. One of the most persistent and least discussed anomalies involves the detection of high-altitude magnetic and plasma pulsations. These are sudden, intense bursts of electromagnetic energy detected by sensitive ground and satellite magnetometers, often lasting only fractions of a second. They are not easily explained by solar flares or standard atmospheric physics. Some researchers have theorized that these pulses are related to massive, subterranean power generation, like energy being released or vented from an underground system. If you have a facility using incredibly powerful, possibly anti-gravity-related technology, the energy leakage could manifest as these intense, localized plasma bursts in the atmosphere. The military connection here is unavoidable. Remember Project Iceworm, the Cold War initiative to build a massive network of underground bases in Greenland? Well, parallel and far more secretive initiatives were rumored for Antarctica. The US, Russia, and the UK have maintained an intense, competitive presence on the continent, far beyond simple scientific curiosity. There are documented, though heavily redacted, reports from the 1960s and 70s detailing anomalous radar returns near U.S. research stations. These weren't weather balloons or aircraft. These were fast-moving objects that appeared to enter and exit the atmosphere at impossible velocities, often descending directly toward the ice sheet, only to vanish from radar detection deep beneath the surface. This leads to the ultimate question. are the Ross shifters, the Thwaites heat source, the Vostok anomaly, and these aerial phenomena, all interconnected? Are we looking at a series of separate natural mysteries, or are we mapping out the infrastructure of a single, massive, advanced operation?
If it's an operation, then we must consider the possibility that whatever is down there is utilizing the natural features of Antarctica, the thick ice for protection, the geological rift for energy access, the magnetic pole for navigation or power generation to sustain itself. The moving structures under the Ross ice shelf could be vehicles, mining equipment, or even mobile habitat units. The heat under Thwaites could be their power plant.
The magnetic anomaly, their central communication or energy hub. This idea of a massive, interconnected technological system operating beneath the ice is terrifying because it implies not only advanced technology, but also a long-term presence. We are talking about something potentially predating human recorded history, or perhaps something extraterrestrial that has chosen the most isolated, secure location on Earth for its base of operations. If you're finding this deep dive into the hidden history of Antarctica as mind-blowing as I am, make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next stage of this investigation. We are just scratching the surface of the military documents and satellite data that hint at massive geometric entrances found in the steep cliffs of the coastal regions. Let's zero in on one specific piece of satellite data that sent ripples through the intelligence community a few years ago: the detection of sub-ice geometric patterns near the Wilkes Land region. Wilkes Land is already famous for the massive kilometer-wide gravity anomaly, a feature that many speculate is a buried impact crater, possibly from the Permian-Triassic extinction event. But recent, incredibly high-resolution synthetic aperture radar (SAR) data, initially intended for ice mass balance studies, revealed something far more unsettling adjacent to the alleged impact zone. The SAR images showed incredibly precise, rectilinear patterns, perfectly straight lines and right angles, beneath several hundred meters of ice. These patterns extended for many kilometers and were inconsistent with any known natural geological or glaciological process. Glacial ice moves, it shears, it fractures, but it rarely creates perfect 90-degree corners over vast distances. The initial official explanation? That the radar was picking up ancient, cuneiform fault lines in the bedrock, a geological ghost image. But skeptics, including some of the very scientists who processed the raw data, pointed out that the lines were too uniform and too regular. They suggested the possibility of ancient foundations, massive walls, or perhaps a vast buried grit system, the ruins of a colossal city or installation that existed before the ice swallowed the continent whole. Imagine the engineering required to build something that could withstand the continental shifts and the subsequent ice age. We're talking about materials and construction techniques far beyond anything we possess today. If these patterns are truly artificial, they represent a lost civilization that mastered global-scale architecture and energy distribution. And the timing of this data release is suspicious. It was quickly classified, and the public-facing version of the SAR data was heavily filtered, leading to immediate speculation that whatever was found was too sensitive for general knowledge. Why hide ancient foundations unless those foundations are still active, or unless they lead somewhere we aren't supposed to find? Let's connect this back to the Vostok anomaly. If Vostok is the energy source and Thwaites is the venting system, perhaps the Wilkes Land grid represents the distribution network. A massive power grid built into the bedrock, utilizing the unique magnetic properties of the continent. This brings us to the ultimate chilling possibility that Antarctica is not just hiding secrets, it is actively concealing an ongoing operation. Consider the recent aggressive deployment of advanced radar systems by multiple nations specifically targeting the deep ice zones. This isn't just pure science. This is a race. A race to map, understand, and potentially exploit whatever is down there before another nation, or perhaps the entity itself, claims dominance. The geopolitical tension surrounding Antarctica isn't just about fishing rights or mineral deposits. It's about the potential for technological leapfrogging. If one nation uncovers and reverse engineers the technology of the Ross shifters or the Vostok energy source, they would gain an irreversible military and energy advantage over the rest of the world.
And that, my friends, is why Antarctica remains the most heavily guarded, least understood, and most strategically important piece of real estate on the planet. We've covered the ground, the sea, and the air. But there is one final, crucial piece of the puzzle that ties all these anomalies together: the evidence of sophisticated ancient mining operations and the discovery of non-terrestrial elements. Next time, we are going to dive into the truly fringe, the claims of exotic isotopes found in meltwater runoff, and the alleged discovery of massive subterranean elevator shafts deep within the Ellsworth Mountains.
This is where the story stops being merely scientific speculation and starts sounding like a blockbuster sci-fi horror film. But for now, I need your final thoughts on the Wilkes Land grid. Ancient ruins, or just misinterpreted geology?
Let me know in the comments. Share this video with a friend who loves a good, high-stakes mystery. And remember to stay curious, stay questioning, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't miss the Ellsworth Shafts reveal. Welcome back, anomaly hunters. If you thought the Wilkes Land grid was just an optical illusion created by a bored satellite operator, prepare to have your mind absolutely blown, because we are diving headfirst into the Ellsworth Shafts. This is the promised reveal, the one that truly separates the casual curiosity from the full-blown existential dread. We are moving from the coast of Wilkes Land, deep, deep into the interior, into the Ellsworth subglacial highlands. Now, remember, Antarctica isn't just flat ice. It's a continent of colossal mountain ranges, some taller than the Alps, all compressed and buried under miles of glacial ice. This is rugged, terrifying terrain, and it's where the ice-penetrating radar started returning data that, frankly, should be impossible. What they found wasn't a lake, wasn't a mountain peak, and wasn't a horizontal structure. It was a massive, vertical void. We're talking about shafts, perfectly formed, geometric cylinders, cutting straight down through kilometers of ancient rock and ice. Let me break down why this is so much more unnerving than the Vostok Lake mystery. Vostok, while fascinating, is a natural phenomenon, an enormous body of water trapped by geothermal heat and pressure. The Ellsworth shafts, however, defy natural explanation. Geologists tell us that natural fissures, or crevasses, are irregular. They follow lines of weakness. They zig, they zag, they widen and narrow. But the data coming from the Ellsworth region shows structures that are straight, uniform in diameter, and plunge vertically for distances that sometimes exceed 2 kilometers. 2 kilometers of perfect, circular, vertical penetration. Think about the sheer, unimaginable energy required to bore a hole like that through kilometers of solid granite and metamorphic rock, all while being under the crushing weight of the Antarctic ice sheet. This isn't just drilling. This is industrial-scale, deep earth engineering. Now, the obvious question arises. If these are artificial, who built them? And more importantly, why? This is where the speculation leaves the realm of cautious science and enters the territory of high-stakes science fiction. Before we dive into the truly terrifying theories, do me a favor. If you are loving this deep dive into Earth's deepest secrets, smash that like button right now. It helps the channel immensely and ensures you don't miss the next stage of this investigation. The leading theory among the more audacious researchers, and remember, these are the ones risking their careers to get this data, is that these shafts are not necessarily entry points, but extraction points. They are geothermal taps. Imagine a civilization, perhaps one that existed on Earth millions of years ago, or perhaps even an off-world entity that established a temporary base. They need energy. The most potent, reliable, and practically infinite energy source on Earth is the heat radiating from the planet's core, geothermal energy. These shafts could be massive, ancient conduits designed to tap directly into the mantle's heat, drawing immense, unimaginable power to run whatever facility or city lies beneath the Wilkes Land grid. But there's a darker side to the data. When they conduct gravity surveys over these shaft locations, the readings are chaotic. They don't just show a void. They show alternating patterns of extreme density and extreme emptiness. This suggests that the shafts aren't empty pipes. They are structured. They might contain massive, unknown materials, perhaps shielding, perhaps machinery, Perhaps something far, far worse.
The chilling theory, the one that keeps the lights on in the research stations, is that these shafts are not designed to draw energy out, but to allow something to move in or up. What if the shafts are part of a defense mechanism? What if they are ventilation systems for something massive and biological that has been dormant beneath the crust since the planet froze over?
It sounds like a movie, I know. But when you look at the raw data, the geometric perfection, the incredible depth, the inexplicable gravity anomalies, you have to start considering possibilities outside the standard geology textbook. And here's where the Ellsworth anomaly connects back to our previous discoveries. We have the magnetic chaos and potential biological activity at Lake Vostok. We have the massive, structured, potentially city-sized grid at Wilkes Land. And now, we have these deep Earth access points in Ellsworth. They are all situated along what appears to be a continental-scale, non-random distribution pattern. If you map the anomalies we've discussed, Vostok, Wilkes, Ellsworth, they form a rough arc across the continent. This arc mirrors certain subsurface geological stress lines, but the precision of the anomalies suggests intelligent placement, not natural random occurrence. It suggests a single, unified project. What do you guys think? Are these three distinct mysteries, or are they three parts of one gigantic, ancient puzzle? Drop your theories about the purpose of the Ellsworth shafts in the comments below. Are they power plants, access points, or something else entirely? Now, we need to talk about the recent developments that have pushed this from academic curiosity to active, high-alert investigation. The seismic data. In the last decade, there has been an undeniable, statistically significant increase in microseismic activity directly beneath the Ellsworth Highlands and the Wilkes Land region. These aren't massive, tectonic plate-shifting earthquakes. They are smaller, localized tremors, but they are happening far deeper than normal. And critically, they are occurring at the precise depths where the radar indicates the bottom of these shafts and the roof of the Wilkes Land structure reside. This is the sound of something waking up. Think about the implications. If these structures are millions of years old, frozen, dormant, and silent, what would cause them to suddenly begin shifting, vibrating, and generating measurable seismic energy now? The only logical, albeit terrifying, conclusion is that the structures are either failing under pressure or they are being actively used. Something is moving down there. Something is generating internal friction or heat. And this brings us to the final crucial component of the Antarctic mystery: the sudden, intense interest from global military powers. For decades, Antarctica was governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, prioritizing scientific research and conservation. But since the early 2000s, coinciding directly with the publication of the more detailed satellite and radar data about these anomalies, there has been a massive, covert military buildup disguised as scientific logistics and environmental research basis. Why are nations pouring billions into establishing permanent, year-round bases deep in the interior, far away from easy access points? Why the sudden need for incredibly advanced drilling equipment and specialized sub-ice vehicles? It's not just to study penguins, folks. They know something we don't. They are reacting to the increased seismic activity, the undeniable evidence of geometric structures, and the possibility that whatever created the Ellsworth shafts is either about to be unearthed or is actively becoming unstable. This isn't just about finding ancient ruins anymore. This is about containment. This is about securing potentially catastrophic technology, or, heaven forbid, containing an entity that has been locked away beneath the ice. We've covered the three primary anomalies: the biological threat of Vostok, the architectural enigma of Wilkesland, and the engineering horror of the Ellsworth shafts. But the true secret is the synthesis, how they connect. The pattern suggests a continental infrastructure designed by a powerful, technologically superior force. Perhaps to survive a global cataclysm, perhaps to harness the planet's core, or perhaps as an ark to preserve something truly alien. And here is my final challenge to you, the community. We need to start looking at the historical record. If something massive was built on Earth millions of years ago, there must be echoes in our earliest myths and legends. Are the stories of lost continents like Atlantis or Hyperborean realms just fantasy? Or are they fragmented memories of a time when the ice hadn't yet claimed the great southern civilization? The evidence suggests that Antarctica was once temperate, covered in forests, and home to complex life. When the ice came, it came fast, locking everything in a time capsule. The secrets are there, waiting to be found. We are just scratching the surface of this story. We haven't even touched on the bizarre magnetic readings that seem to actively interfere with modern communication satellites whenever they pass directly over the Ellsworth region. We haven't talked about the documented disappearances of research teams who got too close to the rumored entry points. This is a mystery that transcends science and history. It touches on deep time cosmology and the fundamental question of humanity's place on this planet. If you are new here and you just stumbled into this frozen rabbit hole, you need to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. You do not want to miss the next video, where we pull all these threads together, examine the historical myths, and reveal the global implications of what's stirring beneath the ice. Share this video with every single friend who loves a good high-stakes mystery, because the truth is out there, and it's buried under miles of frozen silence. Stay curious, stay questioning, and I will see you in the next video when we synthesize the ultimate truth of the frozen secrets. Until then, keep digging in the comments.